Well, welcome to our Life Talk for this evening. Glad you're here. I see we have some viewers already gathering, and we even had our first like before we even got off the countdown. So thank you for whoever jumped in there early with that. Appreciate that very much. This is week 3 of our series we've entitled "I Quit," and there's some things we do need to quit, and this is a big thing we need to quit: is quit living in fear. And if you can just imagine, if you're new to us, we've been doing this for some months now on Wednesday night, coming to you live on Wednesday night. Obviously, some of you are seeing this after the fact, but we just imagine this is we're sitting around the table in this environment, but maybe sitting around the table for a small group discussion. We want your comments, we want your feedback. We do like the likes and the buttons if you're in social media, so we want to hear from you as we can. Now, just not long from now, we're going to be doing in person midweek again, and that's what MDWK, a time to pause. And what you see right over there, I always point the wrong way, did it again. I'm not good at this camera stuff sometimes, but right there, that's that's a screenshot of our web page. If you go to our church website, which is calvarywb.com, click on the news section, you're going to find all the information you need to take you through that. Also, you're going to be able to find, you can download this sheet, which is a flyer that talks about our life groups on Wednesday, what a prayer gathering is all about, kids, teens, preschool, the whole thing. So we don't want anyone to be left out of the knowledge pool here. We want to all go swimming in it. So that's coming up. So let's get to our study tonight, which I already told you is quit living in fear. And let's just bring in our august group tonight, or August group, depending on which group. Hi, Patsy. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We appreciate that. And hi, Kayla. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Adam.
Hello.
Okay, we're all here ready to go. Well, we typically will start these discussions with an icebreaker, something a little maybe lighthearted, a little bit of fun, get the conversation started, get you thinking. So someone want to tell us our icebreaker for tonight?
Sure. All right, since we're talking about fears, what was your most irrational fear as a child?
This can probably get a little wild. I feel like mine's very common. I feel like this is probably something everybody is afraid of. But of course, the dark. You know, like when you're downstairs or you're in the bathroom and you have to turn the lights off and go back to bed. I would turn those lights off and sprint so fast and jump into bed so that the person under my bed doesn't jump out and get me.
Did you ever get into bed before the room got dark? I mean, that would be fast.
I tried. I was close a few times. What about you guys?
My childhood fear was public speaking. I mean, honestly, it was public speaking. I did not. I mean, when I was called upon to go to the front of class and write an answer on the chalkboard, or to elementary, middle school to do a presentation for something, I dreaded it to the point where I'm like, I got to use the bathroom, or I think my mom was calling. They didn't even have cell phones then. It's just like, I need to go to the office. I mean, I just would make up any excuse to get out of public speaking.
Well, you've got over that quite well, so I commend you for that.
Yep.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think mine was rooted in probably watching too many scary movies. I remember always being afraid at night to look over and like my dolls' heads would turn or something. So I was always like petrified. Like I'd look and I'd be like, "Don't look back," So that was mine.
I didn't see that one coming.
I didn't either. I know what I'm getting you for Christmas, though.
His name is Chucky. No, I'm sorry. I guess mine was probably in school. When we were picking teams for kickball or whatever, you didn't want to be the last kid picked.
Yeah.
That fear of being, that sort of thing. So, yes, I agree with Patsy. Adam, you outgrew that. So, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for watching. Blessings to you as well. So, appreciate that. Those of you that are watching, you can also hit the share button, especially if you're on Facebook, or you can retweet if you're, I guess, what's it called when you're on, I guess it's a share button as well when you're on YouTube. But share this to someone else, and that puts what you're watching right into your news feed, your timeline. And so we appreciate the likes, appreciate the comments, but shares are always appreciated. So very good. So let's get to our study tonight. And of course, I already mentioned that the study is on the subject of I quit and how to quit living in fear. So let's just plow into it. Oh, by the way, I should have mentioned that we do have a study guide. Kayla, tell us how they can get their study guide.
You go on our Facebook page. Hold on.
Very well.
You go on our Facebook page. Our most recent post will have a link that you can get to it right from there. Or on our website, you can go on the news section. You'll find the I Quit section, and you can find it there as well. It's session 3, study guide session 3.
Okay, very good. Thank you for having that already. And also, the study guide questions we'll put on the screen. So if you don't have, have a printer, you're watching on your phone, not hooked up to a printer, but we do have that available to you. So let's get to our first passage tonight. It's going to help us with quitting, at least maybe move. I don't know if we'll get everybody eliminate all of our fears, but at least we can take a little baby step in the right direction. It'll be well worth our time. So we're going to Psalm 56. I think, Adam, you're ready to share that with us.
Yes. It says, "Be merciful to me, O God, for man would swallow me up. Fighting all day, he oppresses me. My enemies would hound me all day, for there are many who fight against me, O Most High. Whenever I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, I will praise his word. In God, I have put my trust. I will not fear. What can flesh do to me?"
Okay, very good. Very good. We'll take just a moment, and this is one of these amazing psalms. I don't know if you can see it in my Bible here, but let's see if I can get this right. But it has this little section at the top above the psalm where it gives the background of the psalm, and those have been included in our Bibles. So it tells us when this was written and by whom. So let me just read that. To the chief musician, set to the silent dove of the distant land. So that would have been the tune. And that would be the melody. We don't know what that sounded like because that's not preserved for us. A Michtam of David, which is a reflection of David, when the Philistines captured him in Gath. So all you have to do with just very much effort is to figure out that story comes from 1 Samuel 21. And it's amazing because he winds up in a place you would never expect to see David. Okay, it says, "And David arose and fled that day from before Saul." This is verse 10, 1 Samuel 21. Before Saul, remember Saul's trying to kill him, so he's on the run. "And went to Achish, the king of Gath," who we know from this context he was a Philistine king. And you remember David's first and original claim to fame was he killed Goliath, who was the champion of the Philistines. So this happened. So the servants of Achish said to him, "Is this not David, the king of the land? Did not sing of him one to another and dances, saying, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s?" If you read the rest of the story, he gets a pretty good clue that I'm going to be trouble. I'm in the wrong place. I'm surrounded by enemies. Mm-hmm. So he's on the run from an enemy, and he winds up surrounded by a bunch of other enemies. So I mean, it goes like it's the proverbial out of the frying pan into the fire, so to speak, between the rock and the hard place. So what he does, he pretends to be insane. He pretends to be a madman, and it talks about how he's sort of foaming at the mouth, and his, the spit is running into his beard. It's not very pleasant. So that the king of Gath kind of dismisses him. Like, why do I need to be? I don't need another crazy person around here. It says in 22 verse 1, the next chapter, that David therefore departed and escaped to the cave of Adullam, which a lot of stuff goes on there too. But anyway, so it's written in a time when he was coming out of danger everywhere, danger on every side. He had, from the human sense, he had every reason to be afraid. And then he writes this psalm. The psalm that you just read there for us. And the part I just want to read is verse 3. "Whenever I'm afraid, I will trust in you." So let's get to our discussion on that. I'm looking forward to this very much.
All right, well, jumping right into it. Question 1 is, when you become fearful, do you tend to let it consume you, or are you able to overcome it easily? Now, again, this is more of a personal question, just to kind of get us in the mindset of fear and how we handle it. So if you're watching, please comment, give us your answers on question number 1. So do you let it consume you, or can you overcome it easily?
I think it depends, honestly. I mean, it depends, like, from a human perspective, from David's situation, it's completely different than I'm going into a dark garage and I see a bunch of nasty big old wood crickets. You know what I'm saying? In that situation, I can scream and run away, right? Or but I think it depends on the situation. And I'll give you a perfect example. A couple of weeks ago, Hava was at a particular camp. I was told that she would be at this location. I show up at this location, and I don't see my daughter. So right then, right there, there's a lot of emotions that kick in. But I'll be honest with you, over a couple of minutes, fear came over because I'm like, I'm not seeing specifically where my daughter is at. And so then panic kind of went in and so forth. So I think it just depends on the situation of the verity of what's taking place.
I was just looking at what a wood cricket looks like, and I just wanted
Oh, Adam's gonna run.
I don't even know if that's what it's called, man.
It is what it's called.
Okay.
It's a wood cricket.
Okay.
I'm impressed by your knowledge of insects, but but I think that, especially with you think about that's very legitimate what you were talking about. Your kids, their welfare. They're not. I mean, there's nothing we have more concern about than that.
It's true. For me, I tend to spiral a little bit. It's something that I definitely need to work on. But especially if it's something about my kids, or if it's about something happening to me where I couldn't be with my kids, it, again, always centers around my children, apparently. But my mind spirals. It can get out of hand really quickly. And I do tend to let it consume me, which I know is not the right way to approach fear. But again, something that I have to work on constantly is trying to overcome it and put trust in God.
In this study, some of the most common fears that was kind of brought to life is fear of loss, which could be your job or a person or you losing control, fear of failure, afraid to maybe start a new business or to start a new ministry or to go back to school or something, but the fear of failure, fear of rejection. Will everybody like me? Will what I wear make a difference? How I do my hair, where I live? And then fear of the unknown, the what ifs. And I think for me, I get lost in the what ifs. Kayla talked about spiraling. Well, I can write a whole book on the what ifs and almost make myself live it out. I think you can almost make the what ifs happen by being so afraid that they're going to happen. You almost cause them to come to life, so it's not so easily.
I would say the top three in that list would be the what ifs, the unknowns, and the loss. I mean, that's just my personal opinion for the top three for what I would say categorize what majority I think people would put themselves in, whether it be a loss of a spouse, a child, a job, whatever else, the unknown, and then the what ifs. Because you are right. I think sometimes a lot of people self-sabotage certain aspects in their life because I have built up the snowball effect of what if because I am so fearful.
Yep.
Well, for me, again, I'm talking about, I'll let it spiral. This is why I typically don't watch the news. I try to avoid, I only try to get what I absolutely need. But, I tend to think about the bad situations no matter where I'm at. If I'm going out to the store and it's just me and my two kids, I mean, you'll just see me constantly like, stay away from me, people. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. Don't come near me.
And we are. Okay.
I was just gonna say, once you see something like on the news, one bad thing happens to someone, and now it's stuck in my brain. That's what I talk about.
The news is designed to feed you the bad news.
Yep.
There's an old saying: "Is no headline ever said plan land safely at local airport."
Right.
That's not news.
That's not news.
And when things go a different direction, then that's the news. So it doesn't follow that. I go back to kind of what circle back around where Adam was. It kind of depends on my status at the moment. Am I emotionally resilient? Am I spiritually resilient? Or am I depleted? And then, I'm more vulnerable for that to take over. And that's why the simple disciplines of being in the Word, praying, being around people that are going to redirect your attention back to the Lord, all very, very important.
Have you ever noticed that your fears are greater at night? I know I remember telling the kids this, it'll always look different in the morning, but it's something about in the middle of the night, like, Jess, you're talking about your spirit's depleted. spiritually, the way you're thinking about the Lord, but also your mental and your physical can also, but it always seems to me things look worse at night, and I'm not even just talking about the boogeyman under the bed or anything, but just sometimes there's something about nighttime when we can't really see the light or see a way out of something. It seems to be worse at night.
Yeah, nighttime seems lonelier. Just, again, darker, everything just, yeah. I agree. It does seem way worse at night.
Okay.
Yep. And Patsy agrees with it. It depends on the situation, but generally she's not fearful. It just depends on the situation.
Yeah. The next question kind of just flows naturally from that.
Yep.
And, what are some consequences we face when we live our lives in fear? How long a list do we want to assemble? I mean, it weighs on us physically to begin with. I mean, It just wears you down. It just exhausts you. It just drains you of energy, of drive, focus. It's very non-productive. Very non-productive. So that's why that comes to
And
mind.
here's something interesting. Like, I was looking at that today. Like, I've heard some things, I've read some things, whatever else about physical health, but I was reading this say it can weaken your immune system. It can cause premature death. It can cause heart problems. And I didn't even know this. It can actually physically cause memory problems if a person consumes constantly living in fear. There's two situations where I can think of right now with two different individuals. One individual, just for whatever reason, just doesn't. There was a certain situation that happened to this individual's household, right? That his household was robbed, right? And this was like years ago. But because of that situation, the only time this person leaves the house is to go to work. And even then, he is watching his house pretty much consistently while he's at work. Groceries, everything else, everything his entire life is delivered to his house because he is just consumed that would happen again. And then
it can completely paralyze you. I mean, it can completely stop you from living. Yeah, I mean, it can definitely take a bad turn.
And then
for me, it makes me afraid. Oh, I'm sorry, Adam, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Really quickly, it's hard to go anywhere, especially if I'm going somewhere by myself or just my kids and I. If I don't feel like I have someone else like who's got my back, who can, help me in certain situations, it's just a constant like thought on my mind, and I can't enjoy what I'm doing or who I'm with. I'm just constantly like looking around, trying to assess what's going on.
Well, and if you're always, on those those top fears that I mentioned earlier, if you're always afraid or fear of loss, you can't live that way. If you're always in fear of failure, you'll never start or do anything. If you're always fear of rejection, you'll never envelop relationships or grow that way. And if you're just fearful of the unknown, that's everything then. That's all the what ifs then. So I don't see how you can have any life if you're constantly living in fear, and those could definitely be the consequences.
I just think of, kind of flow from what you were just saying. They tell people who are lifeguards or whatever, when someone's drowning, you go to rescue them. A lot of times they will fight you because they're just so panicked, rather than saying my rescuer is here, I'm going to relax and let you drag me to shore. With that panic, we start beating on the people who are there to even rescue us.
Agreed.
Okay, let's get to our next passage.
Yes. Question 3. This one's very interesting. I'll start by reading 2 Timothy 1:7. That says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and of a sound mind." So after hearing that verse, according to 2 Timothy 1:7, God has not given us the spirit of fear. But why does the Bible also tell us to fear God? And then here's some examples, some passages you guys can look up, just of times in the Bible where it's telling you to fear God. So that's part 1 of the question. And part 2 is, what does it look like to fear God? I'm very interested to hear your all's answers on this one. I struggled coming up with a good thought behind this, and I was excited to learn.
Sometimes when you like the answer isn't obvious, you go to what is obvious. And so if you have fear, that didn't come from God.
Mm-hmm.
Now we'll come back around to what it means to fear God, but he doesn't drop into us fear. He doesn't plan for us to be fearful. That's not his expectation of us. So it doesn't come from him. So if it doesn't come from him, where does it come from? Our enemy, people around us that may leverage the fear for manipulation or whatever, but it's not coming from God. He's not giving us fear, but it does tell us what he has given us. So we have this access. We have this power, love, and a sound mind.
Mm-hmm.
We have power. I always think of Holy Spirit when I think of power in us, and then love. And I think we love other people. Yes, I think that's appropriating the fact that he loves us. But a sound mind. We think about this differently. We reframe our thoughts. That sort of thing. So that's some general observations.
Well, I like the part where you said that it comes from the enemy. I do believe that Satan weaponizes fear to control us. Because that is certainly, I was also reading today that there's over 80 times in the Bible is the command to do not be afraid. And if you would have asked someone the question, what command do you think you hear the most in the Bible? You might think, do not steal, do not lie, love others, more than yourselves. But it's not. It's do not be afraid. And I think God was already preparing us that is definitely going to be a weapon that Satan can use, is to make us fearful.
I can definitely see that. Just the second part of that I find fascinating, because a lot of people don't know this, but this is a God-fearing man, or this is a God-fearing woman, or to fear God is more out of reverence. It's a holy respect. One of the things I found fascinating to kind of sometimes put our minds around that. Okay, I have this holy respect, I have this reverence, I'm in awe of God. But I found this today was a little bit more interesting. Here are the actions that come from the fear of God, right? Of being in reverence, of being in the presence of God. Serving God, obedience to his command, wisdom, trusting him. But ultimately, it's hating and avoiding evil is having the fear, quote, quote, of God. So I don't know. I found that interesting today. And also, I've always tried to keep this in mind too. In Ecclesiastes chapter 5, Solomon is talking about this in Ecclesiastes. He says, guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Better approach in obedience than to offer the sacrifice as fools do, for they ignorantly do wrong. And he goes on and he talks about speech. And I bring that up just for the simple fact that there's a balance. Yes, God wants you to bring your prayers and talk to him and so forth, but also recognize that you are speaking to God, the one that gives you the very breath that you're breathing right now. That is the very gift. He is the one that has created the universe. And so you can't just be like, hey, what up, God? How you doing? Da, 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 da. Like, there's a holy respect of who he is when you go into his presence.
So you would say then that, because we see again, it says that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but that the Bible also tells us to fear God. It's two different types of fear.
Yeah, let me try an illustration that maybe will work. Most of us somewhere along the line have gotten hold of the wrong wire and gotten shocked. We know how uncomfortable that is. And so because of that experience and knowing what I know here, if I'm working on a light switch or I'm putting in a receptacle or doing something electrical at the house, I don't assume that electric is out to get me. But I have a healthy respect of its power. Now fear in the sense of what God hasn't given us, that's out to get me. That's scary. That's that sort of fear. But, I don't fear the electricity. I need to make sure I've, turned the breaker off, or I'm not touching the hot, the ground wire at the same time. That's going to be bad. So you're just very, very careful knowing the power of it. So one is respecting its power, respecting God's power, His place. But we also have this behind the scenes. He has the best of intentions for us. He's not out to try to trick us into some trap that is waiting to smack us down. I don't know. Does that help at all?
It does. It does. Well, if you go to Jonah chapter 1, folks, if you read Jonah chapter 1, there's a good perspective that pertains to this question, because in one aspect, when Jonah is telling the sailors, it's like, hey, this is Yahweh, this is God, the one that created the seas, everything. So in order for this to stop, throw me overboard. And so when they did, there was this fear of, in essence, the fear of like terror, like, oh my goodness. But that terror brought them to realize who God is. So therefore, it was kind of a different aspect of having a fear of God, if that made any sense.
Yeah.
Good comment, by the way. Patsy writes, do we fear God's judgment? But fear, as referenced here, is being in awe of our God. And I love that word awe. You know, that's what I was going a moment ago. That healthy respect. You were referencing it too, Adam. Anyone else want to add anything to that? Either side of the question.
You know, one thing that you know, when you think about fearing God, it kind of, you know, I think back to what we just read in Psalm 56 about, you know, what can mere mortal do to me? In all honesty, there is nothing on earth that we truly need to fear. There's nothing that, you know, man can't destroy your soul. But again, then I think, so then who should you be afraid of? The one person who can. Who should you then fear? The one person who created you. That, and again, it's not the fear of, oh my goodness, you're going to hurt me, you're out to get me, like you were saying, but just that he's ultimately the one in control. He's the one who, he created us.
Sometimes when we move from thinking about the temporary to thinking about the eternal, that helps too, because I mean, you know, there are things that people can do to us. I mean, you know, man can kill us, you know, things can happen, but it's almost like we have to get outside of ourselves there to know that, you know, even though those things can happen, this is the temporary. If we can move to thinking about the eternal, which, you know, it's easy to say like right here. So I know all of us had something hard, but if we could do that, well, then I think that would show so much that how God has everything in control, that, you know.
But you make a validated point, but that, I think that's why it's so vital for, you know, you going back to Psalm 56, it's why it's so vital for us to have a relationship. It's not just, you know, once a week I'm gathering on Sunday or, you know, on a Wednesday, but it's an everyday, it's an ongoing relationship. And I think it's to the so point where David was able to say in verse 3, when I am afraid, I will trust in you. It's not like he had a scroll to pull out right then, right there. I'm like, all right, let me read about, like, he had to meditate. You know what I'm saying? He had to reflect upon God's goodness and God's grace and be like, you know what? What I'm facing, what I'm fearing of right now, this is what's at hand. But Lord, because of who you are, what you've done and what you continue to do, I'm going to trust in you. And so, yes, it is a continuation for us that we need to be constantly to be thinking eternal. That's why it's so important for us to be gathering on Sundays or to be gathering in a group and to be in the Word like consistently too, because we're always forgetful because we are constantly in the temporary.
Which goes to show how important it is that you can call that up, because we always don't have a scroll with us, the Bible with us, or a phone, but to have memory verses in our minds and in our heart. And I'm just going to pull this out. Any of our preschool parents will know that last month's memory verse is, when I am afraid, I will trust in God. You probably heard all your preschoolers saying it. Kayla's daughter just had a doctor's appointment on Monday. Going in, she was scared to death because she knew she was getting shots. What did she do? She said that verse. She said, when I am afraid, I will trust in God. And then afterwards, she prayed and thanked God because it didn't hurt so bad.
Awesome.
But
well, I also want to shout out, since you mentioned, you know, Lexi, and I hope Kelly doesn't mind me referencing her as well, but she had told me weeks before when she came to church, she was like, Riley said it, like on her own, when she was afraid, like she was in the car, came like out of the blue, just said it on her own. And I almost broke down, like just in tears. It wasn't even my own kid, but knowing that it's making an impact in them. Again, that's why you're repetitive about being in the Word, meditating on those verses. You have to always have it on you, because if you don't, and you've got to look it up on your phone, it's got to look up in your Bible, or you got to go somewhere. It's not too late, but it's a lot handier to just have it ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Jess, you're muted.
You gotta have that one time.
You gotta have that one.
I was gonna say, I remember for our kids, that was a memory verse so long ago. When, of course, they learned it in the King James way back there in those days. But it was always, "What time I'm afraid, I will trust in you."
Mm-hmm.
Dying in the night for some bad dream. That was the go-to verse. And it's not just for kids, but excellent for children as well.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're ready to move on to our next part of our study guide.
Yes. Question 4. Do you think that fear is the opposite of faith?
Yes.
Elaborate on that.
Let's move on.
Hands down. Great discussion, everyone.
I think if you're really trusting the Lord, it's gonna by definition, you can't be afraid. If you really are if your person has faith that the Lord is there and the Lord is control. Now, our faith wavers, and Lord increase our faith, give us faith, but on a very basic level, I think they are opposites. Mm-hmm. And if you're not trusting in the Lord, you not have that confidence, generally fear will fill that vacuum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking that fear it's just faith in the wrong things. It's placing faith in the what ifs. It's putting so much thought and into that. But I like your definition. I like that. I think Adam has one too.
No, I'm listening to you all.
I think it's a little bit of both. It makes sense that it's really to have fear means you're not having faith in God. Then on Lisa's perspective, if you have fear, you have faith, but it's not in God. It's in worldly things. It's in, those 4 fears that we discussed at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it becomes the downward spiral.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what runs through my mind. Here's the soundtrack of my mind. The very first VeggieTales that was ever released, which was early 90s or somewhere in there. And there's this where Junior Asparagus is afraid, and then the little song, God is bigger than the boogeyman.
God is bigger than the boogeyman. Yeah. Yeah, we all know that one.
Yes, yeah. And it's just that, and that was teaching the kids and us adults as well, who thought it was hilarious to watch vegetables singing and dancing. Is that it's just a mindset, Mm-hmm. God is bigger than whatever you're afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple reality, a little different to put it in practice. Adam, were you starting to say something? I didn't mean to jump in ahead of you.
No, I just, like I said, I'm just listening.
I think it's important to remember we're going to face scary things. We're going to be scared. That's not something that we can escape. There's always going to be something scary, fearful things that happen. It's, again, remembering how to deal with it when it happens. And I kind of want to take us right into our bottom line, which is such a great thing to remember. And I want to read Psalm 34:4 first. There it is. I forgot to put it up. I sought the Lord, and He heard me and delivered me from all my fears. It's so simple. I sought the Lord, and He heard me, delivered me from all my fears. So by searching for God, by our bottom line, if you know God and continue to seek after Him, He will deliver you from all of your fears. It's a great reminder. And I feel like trying to not be fearful is very difficult, especially if you're like me and you tend to be a more fearful person. It's hard to just be like, all I got to do is just trust in God. It sounds too simple almost. It doesn't sound right. I feel like something else needs to happen in order for that to work. But in all honesty, it's simple. That's it. Bottom line.
It does sound simple. Seek the Lord. He hears you when you pray.
It's just a simple, almost just a simple prayer, asking God to take that away. So one thing that's important to do, we'll go in our next steps, ask yourself this question: what am I not trusting God with? Because if there's something in your life that you are so fearful of, that means it's something that you're not trusting God with. So whether it's your job, your financial status, your kids, whatever it is, reflect on that. Try to figure out what it is, and it could be multiple things. But ask yourself that question: what am I not trusting God with?
That's a great, and that's just a powerful question.
Mm-hmm.
And then second part of next steps, this week, take whatever you just answered with the above question and diligently seek after God and trust him with it and allow him to remove it. Again, simple. There's nothing complicated about, what the Bible tells us to do when we're fearful. Seek the Lord and he will deliver you from it.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just add 2 verses from the same passage that she just read from in Psalm 34. If you go down to verse 8, it says, taste and see that the Lord is good. How happy is the person who takes refuge in him. And then in verse 18, this is also what I love. For those of us who do have, fear, I mean, from the smallest thing that you would think that's small, but for a child like Lexi, who's 4, that's a huge thing, to something big, whatever else. I love verse 18, where David is saying, the Lord is near the brokenhearted. He saves those who are crushed in spirit. And that's that same process of seeking, continuing to seek out God. Like, Lord, I'm really struggling here, man. I can't trust you in this. I can't tell you why, or I can tell you why, but Lord, I'm seeking you in this.
And I think it's important. I'll say one more thing. I feel like I've talked so much. You say, well, I did. I seeked after God. I was looking after God. I asked him to take it away, but I'm still scared. Keep seeking after God. Continue. You didn't do it enough. Keep going until he takes it away. You seek God until he takes it away.
Amen.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, any other, maybe just not even an extra comment, question, anything you guys want to bring up?
I had jotted this down from the studyism. What you fear reveals what you value the most, but what you fear reveals where you trust God the least.
Oh.
Yep.
Read one more time. Do that again. Read it again.
Okay. What you fear reveals what you value the most, which is not always a bad thing, but what you fear reveals where you trust God the least.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Very good.
That's a good quote.
Yeah, it is. A good take in. Very good. Well, I love this discussion. So we all have some things that we need to quit. Okay. And tonight it's quit doing what isn't working for us, quitting living in fear. Okay. Well, very good. Well, we are going to end tonight with a commercial, actually a little video, because as we mentioned at the beginning of the of our time together, we want you to get fully versed and fully ready for midweek. And we talked about, you go to our website, you can get the all the information there. You can download this sheet. We're going to have these. You can pick these up in bulk on Sunday to take with you and give out to folks. But one of the things, if you notice here, we're, MDWK, which is shorthand for midweek, and you see the little pause button in the middle. And maybe you're wondering, well, why is there a pause button? Well, I think this video that we're going to close out with will answer that question. And so we'll see you back here next week for part 4 of the I Quit series. But coming up August 11th, this is your preview about what's coming up. So before we do that, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Kayla, for all your efforts in front of the camera and behind the scenes tonight. Appreciate that very much. Okay.
Later, guys.
All right, here you go.